Feels like it's been a while since Wilds of Eldraine, but it's actually only been like a couple of months, yet here we are with spoiler season for Lost Caverns of Ixalan, a set that I personally am very excited for, not just for the incredible reprints of Mana Crypt and Cavern of Souls, or the Jurassic Park inclusion with the Universes Beyond, but because I think this set's bringing back a lot of really cool mechanics and fun cards, and I'm excited to go into them. So let's jump into the video. Welcome back to the video, and thank you guys for checking it out, and also for keeping it locked here for spoiler season. Of course, we are going through Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and there have been some crazy reveals so far, and we haven't even really dipped into the reprints or the Jurassic World side sets just yet, but we will get there. But if you guys haven't seen the previous videos, you can feel free to check them out in this playlist. I have made 2 so far. This is the 3rd, and we're going to jump right into it. So if you guys have not yet done so, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe to the channel, and then click that bell icon if you want to be notified whenever new videos are posted, so you can stay up to date with spoilers and brag to your friends how much you know and how much they don't. Anyway, we're going to jump into it, starting off with Threefold Thunderhulk. This is a 7-drop artifact creature gnome that says it enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. You can pay 2, sacrifice another artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Threefold Thunderhulk. So it's going to come out right away and create 3, unless you have some other modifier, I suppose, that comes out with it. It's going to create 3 1/1 tokens, which isn't bad, and obviously there's so many different directions you could take that with, like, making extra tokens, but the fact that it actually can do that when it attacks is what's kind of interesting here, because you can start to buff it up, and then you could sacrifice, another artifact to just one of the gnomes you make, and then just keep making more. I think it's actually kind of neat as, like, an engine to, like, spam the board with a lot of tokens or even artifacts. Honestly, I was thinking about the card Hellkite Tyrant and how funny it might be to, like, just spam create a bunch of gnome artifacts and then just win on your turn because you have like over 20 artifacts or something. A little bit of a silly play combo, but I mean, I guess that's what Commander's all about. Cost-wise, this does feel a little high for standard. I don't necessarily think a 7-drop is going to see too much play there, but it's an artifact, so it's certainly got plenty of application across different formats, and just kind of a neat, just a neat concept card overall. Now, I promise you I'm going to probably mispronounce this. I believe it's Ozurtok Deepest Foundation. I think that's right. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? It is 4 white legendary creature, God with Vigilance, and it says if 1 or more creature tokens will be created under your control, 3 times that many of those tokens are created instead. And then when it dies, you return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. Because really the one thing white needed more was additional token generation, because Anointed Procession and Mondrak are not enough, right? So now we've got token doublers, we've got token quadruplers, and then this is going to make 3 times the amount. Of course, it is only for creature tokens, so it is a little bit lesser than Mondrak in that regard, but that's still insane. If you're playing cards like Soldiers that are going to be just making a bunch of tokens, or even playing this in, white-green and combining it with Doubling Season and other things. I mean, there are so many different ways to take this. This is a really, really powerful card. I think the only thing that's really kind of like a balancer is probably the fact that it does cost 6 versus Mondrak, which costs 4. But, I mean, you really can't overstate the actual combo potential that this card has. It is really, really crazy. And it transforms into Temple of Civilization, which is just a land you can tap to add white mana. Pay 2 and a white, tap, transform, activate only if you attack with 3 or more creatures this turn, it only as sorcery. So again, like some of the other ones, it can come back after, meaning it kind of goes into land, and then you can turn it back over, and it gives you that flexibility, which is always nice for a card like this. But this is a really strong card, I think, that has a lot of potential across pretty much every format, even though I question how good it'll be given its cost in, standard and or like Pioneer. But I think there's going to be ways to make this card work without a doubt. We've got Deeproot Pilgrimage. This is 1 and a blue enchantment. Whenever 1 or more non-token merfolk you control become tapped, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token with hexproof. So this is pretty cool, actually. Goes really well with cards like Vidalian Hexcatcher, where you can like sacrifice a merfolk. You basically have a constant sacrifice outlet, and just being able to do that kind of once per turn whenever you tap them, or if you're swinging, obviously it's just the 1, but if you're like tapping them separately, you can start to spam some tokens. So it's neat, and Merfolk's a tribal archetype that is very popular, and obviously we're getting some special guest Merfolk cards in the set too in the list slot. So it's nice to see new cards on top of that, and I'm sure we'll get a couple more as the spoilers continue. But it's a pretty cool card. Sahil the SunsBrilliance. We've seen Sahil get a lot of different prints, a lot of different variants. This one certainly looks incredible with that showcase frame I talked about yesterday, how cool it looks. This is 1 blue and 1 red, so basically just, great for Is It strategies. Legendary creature, Human Artificer. You can pay a blue and a red, tap, create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So making 2 copies of some of your creatures, making 2 copies of powerful artifacts you control to get their effects. This is a really, really low-cost card to bring out, and it's absolutely opening up so many different combo lines. And obviously, you can't copy legendary creatures, which is probably for the best, because I think that'd be a little too good. But there's so many different directions in which you can take this, and I think this card is going to see a lot of play, and I think people are going to definitely gravitate towards it in Commander more than anything else, but I also think it's not terrible from a standard perspective. I think it's low enough cost that it does have a lot of potential, depending on, what types of things you combine it with. Restless Prairie. This they're continuing the Restless cycle from the last set, Wilds of Eldraine. Again, not incredible, although I will say the art on these continues to just impress me. It enters battlefield tapped. You can add white or green, and then you can pay 2 green-white. It becomes a 3/3 green-white llama until end of turn. It is still a land. Whenever it attacks other creatures you control, get +1/+1 until end of turn. It's kind of cool that there's a llama, like actually a llama card now. I mean, I don't know if there's been any in the past. I'm not familiar with them, but I just think that's kind of funny. The Restless lands are not that great because they do come in tap, but they do have a bit more application because later in the game they can turn into creatures and they can kind of do things that are better than, I guess, just like your generic tap land. So there is that going for it. Creature of the Schism. Schism. Is it Schism? I don't fucking know. 2 and a black creature, vampire cleric with death touch. Whenever it attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. Whenever it attacks while you have the most life or are tied for most life, you draw a card and you lose a life. Pretty cool card overall. It does a lot for a little bit of investment, and it's nice for vampires for sure. A 3-drop death touch that can also give you draw power and or make tokens is definitely not anything to sneeze at. I like the card a lot. Don't really have too much else to say about it, but it's a solid inclusion and a decent vampire. Hit the Motherload. This is 4 and 3 red. It is a sorcery that says discover 10. If the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. If you guys missed it yesterday, Discover is basically a modified version of Cascade. You exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land with mana value equal to the Discover amount. So in this case, 10. So equal to or less. If the mana value is less than 10, you create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. So if you reveal like 2 off the top of the deck, and then you get a 4-drop, you play it, you get 6 tapped treasure tokens, and then the creature comes out. This is a little costly, but I guess getting the treasure tokens is kind of nice. You just have to wait a turn. It's just 7 mana is a pretty steep investment for this. I think this is probably going to be more like pack filler than anything else. Alright, so now, of course, we get to an absolutely insane card. It is a Bloodletter of Alkaz. I think I got that right. It is 1 and 3 black vampire demon with flying, and it says if an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. It is a 2/4, and this is just, there are so many things to say about this card. First of all, it's extremely powerful. Being able to double the damage they take in formats like Standard, considering this costs the same as Sheoldred and can even combo well with Sheoldred in certain circumstances. Obviously, like if you're playing like things that make your opponent draw, because it's got to be during your turn, which is kind of like at least a decent balancing factor. But think about this card's potential with something like Archfiend of Despair. Like, at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. So if you attack with a creature that's a 5/5, you're going to do 10 damage, and then at the end of the turn, Archfiend is going to do another 10 damage. That, in Commander, that's half a player's life total, right? And you can kind of combo these in other ways. If you do 10 damage, you can basically turn that into 40 damage. I just think this card is wild. When I first read it, I was like, what am I missing? I guess, like I said, that your turn restriction is a little bit of a balancer, but Bloodletter of Alkaz might be one of the most impactful cards to come out of this set, and it is extremely, extremely good. Curious what you guys think of this one. Let me know in the comments down below if you think I might be giving it too much credit, but I don't know how you can read the card and its cost and can just kind of look at it and see where it fits and not think it's absolutely insane. Unstableglyph Bridge is 3 white artifact. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, for each player, choose a creature with power 2 or less that player controls, then destroy each creature not chosen this way. You can craft with an artifact for 3 white white. Of course, the crafting we talked about yesterday. Exile this artifact, then exile another artifact you control or in your grave. Return it to the battlefield transformed. And it transforms into Roaming Sandspout Glyph, which is a flying artifact golem 5/3. When an opponent casts a spell during their turn, they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control this turn. Each opponent who attacked you or a planeswalker you control this turn can't cast spells. Definitely very restrictive on the opponent. It does fit right into what white is looking to do most of the time. But again, it's pretty costly, and more importantly, the actual crafting part of this is pretty costly too. But I guess it is a somewhat decent board wipe that can be a little bit more selective. So there's that going for it. I guess it's worth a look. But I'm going to reserve judgment on this until I see kind of what type of performance it actually has in competitive settings. Because right now, I want to say it seems decent, but I also feel like it costs far too much. So we'll see exactly how that kind of shakes out. Now, we get to an absolutely insane card. I know I've said that a couple times, but I'm not even exaggerating here. Sovereign Okenek Ahau. Ahau? I don't know. Ahau, I think is right. Whatever. You guys know I'm trying my best here. This is 2 green white legendary creature, Cat Noble, and it says when this card enters the battle, when this card attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. I just want to explain to you how good this card actually is, because it's basically doubling the number of +1/+1 counters every turn that creatures have, but only it has to attack. So someone brought up a good example on Reddit of a card like Craterhoof Behemoth. Let's say you just have some 1/1 cat tokens out. You play a Craterhoof, and you have 5 creatures total, so everything gets +5/+5. When Sovereign attacks, now all of your cats are going to get 5 +1/+1 counters, and then next turn when you do it, they're going to keep doubling. So think about dropping a Craterhoof and then attacking and just giving everything else power equal to the difference. And this doesn't even cost that much to play, and it has wards. So, like, combining it with cards like Jetmir Nexus of Rebels, which is another really good cat dog tribal, however you want to, put those things together, you can just put so much damage on board with this, and it's really not that hard to do. Like, it can even buff itself if you technically bring its stats up, but this card just combos so well, even with, like, Lords and Anthems that are just buffing. Just absolutely insane card. If you're someone who's like a big fan of like the cat dog tribal, whatever, you got to be like thrilled about this card. But I think it'll probably work well as a commander on its own right too, if you maybe build something like token based with buffing stuff up. This one is my MVP card of this video. I do think it is just a wild, no pun intended. It is a wild card, and again, just incredible artwork to boot. And finally, we've got Bringer of the Last Gift, which has just the alternate artwork here is absolutely unreal. It is 6 black vampire demon with flying. When it enters the battlefield, if it was cast, each player sacrifices all other creatures they control. Then each player returns all creatures from their graveyard that weren't put this way to the battlefield. Pretty damn powerful board wipe. You can't cheese it out with something and still get that effect, which is obviously a good balancing factor. But, like, if your opponents don't have a lot of creatures in grave and you just force them to sack everything, you're still keeping this out. And there's so many ways to set this up so that you can maximize the benefits you get from it, and your opponents get, like, limited benefits, or even if you ping stuff out of their grave. I think it leans more towards, if it is playable, being more commander-oriented because of its cost, but it's still an insanely cool card that I do think, while it's not amazing, it definitely can be good in the right circumstances. So I'm kind of excited to be able to see this in action, and I'm sure it'll fit nicely with vampires just because it's pretty powerful for what it does. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think of the reveals so far. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.